might want to.
Change the microphone.
Lord Kapila Dev. Hare Krishna. Lord Kapila Dev. We spoke a little bit about Kapila Dev, and I thought to do more about Kapila Dev because we started. Remember how it started? It started with, in Houston, I spoke on a verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2. And somebody from somewhere said, actually from St. Louis, said, there's almost the same verse in Kapila Dev's teachings in Canto 3. Could you speak on both verses? So we spoke on both verses. I explained a little bit that evening about Lord Kapila Dev. So I thought I would do a little bit more about Kapila Dev and like his, well, it says, his life and his teachings. And there's a lot of details, or a fair amount of details about Lord Kapila Dev. One of the best sources about Lord Kapila Dev is from Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami, one of the books that Rupa Goswami wrote was this one, Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Rupa Goswami's elder brother was Sanatana Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami wrote Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Brihat means big or great. So Rupa Goswami, being his younger brother, he wrote Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Light, Brihat and Laghu, because he was always at the feet of his elder brother, Sanatana Goswami. What Laghu Bhagavatamrita is, it's a large book, and it was translated by Gopi Puranadana Prabhu and published by the BBT. It's essentially a collection of various resources in different sections describing the avatars of Vishnu or avatars of Krishna. And it's resting upon, the starting point is one of the 6 questions by the sages of Naimisharanya being answered in Canto 1, Chapter 3. So now we're going back again to the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam, since you all love Srimad Bhagavatam. If you hang around me a little bit more, you'll love it even more. Srimad Bhagavatam, first 3 chapters, is a foundation or basis of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in the format, as all of the Puranas are in the format of questions, answers. And the scene, as we described the other day, the scene is Krishna has left. The sages knew what that meant because they were very learned in the scripture. It meant the age of Kali, things will get worse and worse and worse and worse. So they wanted to do something to counteract that influence of the age of Kali. So they decided to do what they knew how to do best, which was perform yajnas. Their plan was, as soon as one yajna was finished, the next yajna, as soon as that one was finished, next yajna, and continue for 1,000 years. Now, they couldn't live for 1,000 years, but collectively, sages doing like that. And lo and behold, when they began their yajnas, in their midst was Sutta Goswami. We discussed this already. Sutta Goswami was the son of Romaharshan Sutta. We told a little bit about the story of Romaharshan Sutta. And Sutta was his son, so he became the next in line after his father. And not only that, he was qualified to speak on all of the section of the Vedas known as the Puranas, but he also was in the assembly where, for the first time, Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukadev Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. He was in the audience, he heard the whole thing, and he had such a perfect memory. When they saw Sutta, they said, "Can you speak Srimad Bhagavatam?" Second time around. But they didn't ask it that way. They asked it in the form of very probing questions, and from those questions then some answers, and that's first the questions. The questions are in chapter 1, and then the answers to those 6 questions are in chapters 2 and 3. And one of those 6 questions was, now that Krishna has departed, where will religious principles take shelter? That was the 6th question. And the answer is Srimad Bhagavatam. In this age of Kali, people will get light. In this dark age of Kali, people will get light from the light of the Bhagavad, which is as brilliant as the sun, although when the sun sets, it's darkness of night. The moon may rise. And this Bhagavatam is moon-like, that is cooling and soothing, but it's as brilliant as the sun. That was one of their questions. That was the 6th question. And that was the answer to the 6th question. Based on that 6th answer, Srila Prabhupada wrote a book called Light of the Bhagavad. Maybe some of you have heard me speak about it 6 times. That's 4 times. 4 times. It was Light of the Bhagavad, just a little background. It was written by Srila Prabhupada in 1962. When he received notice that there was a conference going on in Japan, he was, at that time, he had just taken sannyas 2 years prior. He had no money. He had no followers. He had no typewriter. He was a sannyasi with nothing. Nothing. A little room. Paid 5 rupees a month for his little room. It was a little room. And from that he was envisioning changing the face of the earth planet. And he writes like that. So, skipping a lot of the background, he wrote a book. The organizer of an event in Tokyo, the event was called something very high-sounding, but didn't really mean much. Conference for the Cultivation of the Human Spirit. Now, what does that mean? But he wrote to the organizer and he wanted to participate. And the organizer wrote back and gave him a very nice letter that was sufficient for him to get his visa and passport, which he didn't have. And then he envisioned writing a book and making a paper and having posters, and and his idea was to elevate the consciousness of all these international participants coming for the cultivation of the human spirit to help revolutionize the world. It was like Prabhupada had that vision. He wrote it in the book. I mean, he didn't write it exactly like that, but that's what he was doing. And he called it Light of the Bhagavad, resting upon that image from the 6th answer to the 6th question. After Krishna has departed, where will religious principles receive shelter? Bhagavatam. So another one of the 6 questions was, please describe the forms of the Lord as they appear in this world. Now there's one movie producer that likes that word also. Avatar. But that's what it means. Well, the avatar means one who descends from the spiritual plane to this plane. That's the meaning of avatar. So in Canto 1, Chapter 3, which is the foundation of this book by Rupa Goswami, that's where he starts the book, and then he goes in other directions and expands and expands. But the incarnations of the Supreme Lord, that Lagu Bhagavatamrita, is just that subject matter, that one of the 6 questions answered in a big book. And in that big book that Kapila Dev is mentioned, many things are mentioned, but because our topic is Kapila Dev, let's see what Lagu Bhagavatamrita has to say about Kapila Dev. He makes reference to Padma Purana. Padma Purana is one of the Puranas in the mode of goodness. Remember we said there's 18 principal Puranas, 6 plus 6 plus 6 makes 18. Those written for those in the mode of goodness, Padma Purana is one of them. Padma Purana speaks about Kapila Dev as a Leela avatar. Leela avatar. Everyone knows what a Leela avatar is, right? A form that descends from the spiritual world for the purpose of pastimes. There's the Das avatar, which is very celebrated, like our Nrsimha prayer is from that Das avatar writing. It's a set of prayers for part of it. A larger book by a great Vaishnava poet. And so Leela avatars includes the Kapila. It's just mentioned. Lord Kapila, who is an Angsa avatar of Lord Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is Krishna. So he is an Angsa, which means a plenary portion. So a plenary portion of the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, Krishna, is an Angsa, and that's what Kapila Dev is, and he's listed in Padma Purana as one of the Leela avatars. That's in chapter 3. In chapter 4, it places him as a Leela avatar in a specific subdivision of Leela avatars. Prabhava avatar. What's a Prabhava avatar? There's 2 characteristics, or 2 types. One is a Prabhava avatar briefly is manifest and is not so famous. There's not like lots and lots and lots and lots written about them. Examples, Mohini Murti, Hangsa avatar. You've probably heard of Hangsa avatar, but if I asked you, what do you know about Hangsa avatar? You go, he was a swan. And Yuga avatars beginning with Shukla. Now, I don't know anything about Shukla, other than that's his name. That's one of the Yuga avatars' names. So that's one of the characteristics of a Prabhava avatar. And the second is those who are authors of scripture and are generally great sages. So Kapila Dev is in that category. He's a Yuga avatar, he's a Leela avatar that wrote scriptures, and he's a sage. And we don't know a lot about his life. We know some things. I'll tell you some of those things. Dhanvantari. What's Dhanvantari known for? Ayurveda medicine, right? A form of Vishnu that delivered knowledge of Ayurveda. Rishabha. What do we know about Rishabha? 5th Canto Bhagavatam. He's found there. Rishabdev and his 100 sons, the head of his 100 sons was was Bharata Maharaj. Right? We haven't gotten that far yet. Okay. Rishabdev. But you know Bharata Maharaj. Everybody knows Bharata Maharaj. And then in the next life he became Agir, and the next life he became Jad Bharat, that Bharat Maharaj. His father was Rishabdev, and Rishabdev gave some teachings to his sons. It's in the Bhagavatam, 5th canto, chapter 5. He didn't write books, but he gave teachings. Everybody knows Vyas. Who's Dattatreya? Who wants to say something about Dattatreya? Yes? Okay, let's go back. Anusuya was the wife. Atri Muni was one of the sons of Brahma. Atri Muni was one of the sons of Brahma. He married Anusuya, and they very much desired to have the personality of Godhead as their son, but they weren't specific. So they did austerities for a long time, and from the sky, there were the three deities of Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. And they said, partial expansions of us will become your sons. Atri Muni and Anusuya. So who was the partial incarnation of Lord Shiva? Durvasa Muni. You've heard his name, Durvasa Muni? Yeah, sure. Ooh, look out for Durvasa Muni. And the partial incarnation of Lord Vishnu was Dattatreya. Dattatreya. So Dattatreya was, he's an interesting personality, but he's a form of the Lord that gave teachings. He gave transcendental teachings. Not much is known, but he's one of those Prabhava avatars of Hari. And Kapila. The only place where I could find that Kapila Deva is described as a Shaktivesh avatar is found in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Teachings of Lord Chaitanya is Prabhupada's summary of the 5 principal sections of instruction or shiksha or teachings of Lord Chaitanya found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm spending some time giving you kind of like a background, so when you start reading more, at least you've heard it. You know, this is where the train is going. Like, okay, I'm on board. Where's the train going? This is where the train is going. So those 5 sections where Lord Chaitanya gave instructions were, he gave instruction to Sanatana Goswami, he gave instructions to Rupa Goswami, he had discussions with Ramananda Roy, he had discussions with Prakash Ananda Saraswati, mainly about impersonalism, and he had discussions with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, also about impersonalism. So the 5 sections. That's 5, so that's teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Within teachings of Lord Chaitanya, there's mentioned there that Kapila Deva is a Shaktivesh avatar, and everybody knows what Shaktivesh avatar. You've heard the term Shaktivesh avatar? I'm asking this young man over here. Okay. You know what Shakti means, right? Shakti means power or potency or energy. So there are living entities that are invested with the Shakti of the Supreme Lord to do something. For example, Lord Brahma is invested with the Shakti to create. He's a Shaktivesh avatar, Brahma. He's invested with creative potency. Another example is Prithu. Prithu is an incarnation. Jiva invested with the power to rule. So he was a king, and he was a really good ruler. He's an avatar, a Shaktivesh avatar, empowered by the potency of the Supreme Lord to rule. and so forth and so on. There's different Shakti avatars. Narada Muni is invested with the Lord's Bhakti Shakti. That's a nice position, huh? Bhakti Shakti. And so forth. So Kapila is invested with the potency of the Supreme Lord to deliver Sankhya teachings. Here's another Sanskrit word. What does Sankhya mean? Sankhya means to count. That's a direct meaning of the word. Sankhya is to count. So essentially here's categories of matter and here's categories of spirit. So it's an analysis of categories of matter and categories of spirit. And he taught elaborately on Sankhya. We're going to touch on that after I stop blabbering here about who he is and what he did, his life and things. Sankhya is very important. We'll go there shortly. He, Kapila Dev, gave his Sankhya philosophy to his mother. Who is his mother? Devahuti. Some of you know. We're going to describe a little bit. See, there it says, there's her name, Devahuti. See in that kind of green letters? And there's Kapila Dev. He had golden hair and a dark complexion. And this section of Srimad Bhagavatam that he's described is in the second half of Canto 3. Because of his ruddy complexion, Brahma gave him the name Kapila. But he wasn't the son. Kapila wasn't the son of Brahma, but Brahma gave him the name. We'll hear some more. Kapila gave teachings. We don't know of any books that he wrote, but he gave teachings. He gave teaching to his mother. And he also had a well-known disciple, doesn't have a nice name, Asuri Brahmana. It's not Asura, it's Asuri Brahmana. And Asuri Brahmana had a student named Pancha Sikha, and the Pancha Sikha visited Janak Maharaj. Who's Janak Maharaj? Sita's father. And he's one of our 12 Mahajans. Janak Maharaj was visited by Pancha Sikha, who was a disciple of Asuri Brahman, who was a disciple of Kapila. So Kapila goes way back. It's actually Satya Yuga. Though Ramachandra didn't appear in Satya Yuga, or Janaka didn't appear in Satya Yuga, but Kapila lived for, he was present for a long, long time. So that's a little bit about his background. Now we're going to speak a little bit about Lord Brahma in the beginning of creation. Lord Brahma in the beginning of creation, he produced a number of sons. 9, and then there's a 10th son. So one of those 10 sons was Brighu Muni, and Brighu Muni later became Maitreya Muni's guru. I'm mentioning Maitreya Muni because Maitreya Muni is the one who's speaking this section of 3rd Canto Bhagavatam. Now, the purpose of mentioning names that you may not have heard of is not to spin your mind or something. It's to give you a little background, so when you hear the names, where does it fit in? What's the big picture here? So Brighu Muni is a celebrated personality. One of the things he's celebrated for is astrology. There are persons in this world that are said to be in the line of Brighu. They're called Brighu readers, and they can tell you all kinds of things that most people that know astrology can't tell you, because he was very skilled. And if there's actually in that line, they're very skilled astrologers. But he was a very elevated person, and one of his students or disciples was Maitreya. So Maitreya, by this time, He's quite elderly. And where Maitreya, it's described in the third canto Bhagavatam that he was an elevated person, but he wasn't a great devotee yet. He became a great devotee when he heard Krishna speaking to Uddhava. There were two times that Krishna spoke to Uddhava. One of them, spoke about already, when Uddhava knew intuitively, because of his affection and deep relationship with Krishna, that Krishna was going to leave. So Uddhava Gita, which is found in the 11th canto, was discussed. And then Krishna sent Uddhava, I'm going to leave very soon. You please, I want you to, I didn't get to visit the sages in Badrik Ashram in the North Country, in the Himalayas. So I'd like you've heard from me, you my representative, you go to where they are and give my association on my behalf. Uddhava didn't want to go. Uddhava wanted to go with Krishna, but Krishna gave him some service, so he had to go. And he got some distance, then he couldn't take it, he had to go back. And when he went back, he saw Krishna by the side of the river Saraswati. That's what this painting is. And he saw Krishna in a four-armed form, leaning against a young banyan tree. And just at that time, Maitreya happened to be present also. He had to hear the whole conversation, the final instruction between Krishna and Uddhava. He heard the whole thing. From that association, he became, because he's an elevated person, he became a devotee. He became a great devotee. So we went from a great person to a great devotee. And Uddhava then started heading for the North Country. Some time passed. He made it as far as Vrindavan. This is Uddhava, made it as far as Vrindavan, because in your morning classes, you just began Canto 3, right? The Monday, the class I gave the other morning, Canto 3, Chapter 1, verses 1 through, whatever it was, 7 or 8. So as that goes on, as Canto 3 goes on, what happens is, because the question from the end of Canto 2 is, hey, Vidura went on pilgrimage. You said that way back in Chapter 7. Where did he go? Tell me about the places, the holy places he visited. And you mentioned that he met Maitreya. I bet that was a really fantastic discussion. Can you describe that discussion? Because they're both elevated persons. So to oblige, Shukadeva Goswami narrates Vidura's pilgrimage. Vidura then goes to Prabhas. Prabhas is the place very near to Dwarka, where the residents of Dwarka eliminated each other. It is a detail of how that happened. And then Krishna departed. And so he knew Dwarka's finished, Krishna's pastimes are finished. That's Vidura. Vidura knew that. So what did Vidura do after that? He continued on his pilgrimage, and lo and behold, in Vrindavan, in a forest, he just happened to bump into Uddhava. Hey, Uddhava, Haribol. And they asked him many questions about Krishna, and he hit Uddhava's Krishna button, and he just went into a trance. And then he began speaking about Krishna. There's two and a half chapters where he speaks about Krishna and Krishna and Krishna and Krishna and Krishna and Krishna. You find out lots of inside loving feelings of Uddhava towards Krishna and Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and out of Vrindavan. And then he goes on, Uddhava goes on asking, Vidura goes on asking more questions. And by this point, Vidura actually, he realizes the elevated position of Uddhava in many ways. Uddhava is super qualified. So is Vidura. But Uddhava is super qualified. He's been with Krishna day and night for years. Like 80 years. He's been with Krishna all the time. And he knows Krishna, he loves Krishna, and he's vastly learned. Uddhava was a disciple of Brihaspati. And who is Brihaspati? He's the spiritual master of the demigods. He was a disciple of Brihaspati. He was a very qualified person. So Uddhava wanted to receive instructions and wanted to become his disciple. There's this nice teaching in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's writing, in explaining, he was reluctant to do that because not far away was elder to him, Maitreya. Elder to him means Maitreya was like the age of his father. And those two things, because Vidura was elderly, like the age of his father, and Maitreya was elderly, like the age of his father. It's not appropriate, age-wise. But also, second reason, in the proximity of someone who's very elderly and very capable, it's an offense. It's against social etiquette to instruct someone and so forth and so on. So he sent him to go see Maitreya. He's that away. Follow that path and you'll find Maitreya. Uddhava also told Vidura that Krishna, just before he left, Krishna said, very soon, Vidura is going to come. And when Vidura heard that, his heart melted. He said, he was thinking of me just before he left. So then he went to find Maitreya, and he found Maitreya. And this discussion about Kapila Dev is a discussion between Maitreya and Vidura. Vidura is wearing white, Maitreya is wearing saffron, and they're way up in the North Country, and it's a nice painting. So Vidura asks a whole chapter's worth of questions, and Maitreya gives several chapters worth of answers. And then those answers get more questions, and it goes back and forth like that. Questions and answers. Because that's the format of the Puranas. So in the course of this discussion, Maitreya goes back to the process of creation. And in the process of creation, that was one of the questions that was being asked earlier. In the process of creation, Lord Brahma is born from the lotus coming from the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He does his tapa, he gets self-realization, he gets the instruction from within his heart, all of the Vedas, and the instruction that he's supposed to build the universe. And he gets the blueprint and the creative Shakti. Brahma is another Shakti Vaishavatar. Did I mention already? The Shrishti Shakti, the potency for creation. He's empowered directly by Krishna to do it. So he did it. And after he did it, then he has to fill up the universe. I mean, that's just this neighborhood, universe. He needs some help. So different entities are coming from the body of 4 Kumaras, Lord Shiva, these great sages, and the first Manu, Swayambhuva Manu and his wife. We had this discussion, didn't we? Okay, so Swayambhuva Manu had 2 sons and 3 daughters. And we're going to hear, well, you will all hear about the sons later. But before we hear about the sons, we hear about one of the 3 daughters. We hear about Devahuti. Devahuti, Prasuti, and Akuti, 3 daughters. So we hear about Devahuti. She heard from Narada Muni about Kardama Muni was one of the direct sons of Brahma. And Kardama Muni was requested by his father, Lord Brahma, please help me fill up the universe with good offspring. So it was, yes, sir. So he went off to the forest, and he was engaged in what people did during that age. He was engaged in dhyan yoga, or meditation. But he wasn't just meditating on a tree or the sky or his breath. He was meditating on Vishnu. And after long austerity, there's a nice painting, Lord Vishnu came. And when Lord Vishnu came, boy, was Kardama Muni shocked and ecstatic. And he fell before him. He's a learned sage. He offered prayers. And Lord Vishnu said, you please me very much. I know what's in your heart. You'd like to have me as your son. So that means he had vatsalya rasa, or parental affection. So I'm going to become your son. Good news. Before it happened, I'm going to become your son. And your good wife, who will help you have that qualified son, she's going to come out here to the forest and meet you in 2 days. Fantastic. He didn't have to go through all that hassle of finding a wife. And Lord Vishnu is making the marriage arrangement. No problem. May you all be so fortunate one day. So, he disappeared. And sure enough, Swayambhuva Manu came with his daughter, because his daughter had heard from Narada Muni about the qualities of Kardama Muni, and she said, Dad, I want to marry Kardama Muni. Can we go find him in the forest? So they found him. And the arrangement was made that after the son that would be born of them would become of age, then with the permission of the father, he would then return to his meditations in the forest. The idea is he wanted Vishnu as a son. The idea was not, I want to have a nice family life. I mean, he wasn't opposed to it, obviously, because he had children, but that wasn't his aspiration. His aspiration was a loving attachment for the personality of Godhead. Here's another painting. There we see Lord Vishnu standing on the back of Garuda. It looks like a very nice place to do meditation. And the marriage happened right there in the forest. And after their marriage, what did they do? Because this is Satya Yuga, I meant to look up the number of years, but something like 10,000 years of austerities. And she was doing along with him. And as she was doing along with him, she got lean and thin. But she was happy, she wasn't unhappy. But he was thinking that she's a princess and she's not used to this. But she's such a faithful wife and so qualified in so many ways. She also wants children, I know. And so he decided to make some arrangement. Because he was a mystic, along with being a great sage, by his mystic power, he created, this is a painting of the city. Devahuti looks pretty astonished to see this flying city. And some maids came and made her nice and clean, and nice decorations and nice ornaments, and fixed her up. And off they went in this vimana, traveling around the universe, sightseeing, little vacation. And after some time, some children were born. And the first of the children that were born were 9 daughters to Kardama Muni and Devahuti. So when those 9 daughters were born, guess who visited them? Lord Brahma, the father of Kardama Muni. Thank you very much. You've done a very nice job. You're very qualified. These are qualified ladies, these ladies should all marry my 9 sons. And they should be married, there's details about, they should be married according to quality, not the other kind. Like he likes her, she likes him, okay, get married, and what else? It was the understanding of their quality were to match. And you see in the painting, there's Lord Brahma on the back of his swan carrier, but look closely in the little left corner, there's the 4 Kumaras, and there's Narada Muni. And when he visited, this is when Brahma said within the womb of Devahuti, that is an unborn child, and that he's an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And it's at this point that Brahma gave him the name Kapila because of his ruddy complexion. So after some time, the girls are married, and Kapila Deva is born, and he grows up. And when he grows up, there's a nice section where Kardamuni, dressed in white, speaks to his son, Kapila Deva, and says wonderful things, because it's a little unusual in one sense, because he wanted the personality of Godhead as his son. There he is, his son. And now he's going to go back to the forest and do meditation. Meditate on Vishnu, who's right before him. It's a little puzzling, but the understanding that's given is he wanted to set an example. So what a big sacrifice. The personality of God is his son. He's going to go back to the forest to set an example of not remaining attached to family life. Hint, whoops, it's a lesson. Don't be attached to family life. So he speaks many things, and Kapila Deva gives many nice answers. And after his father leaves, then it just leaves Kapila Deva and his mother. Now this painting shows they're living in a thatched hut with a straw roof. This painting shows they're in a palace, and either way, she understands that Kapila Deva is going to depart sometime soon. Plus, she's feeling great separation from her husband. She wants to know how to deal with that, how to deal with feelings of separation from her husband, and knowing that after some time, he's also going to depart. He's not going to stay forever. She knows that he's the personality of Godhead, so she's approaching him in that mood. She's not ordinary, and she knows he's not ordinary. So that's how the section of Srimad Bhagavatam dealing with the teachings of Kapila Deva begins. And I'm going to speak something about Sankhya philosophy, because anybody that's been around for a while, when you hear the name Kapila Deva, you immediately think of Sankhya philosophy. He's the propounder of Sankhya philosophy. That's what we always hear. He is the propounder of Sankhya philosophy. Where does Sankhya philosophy lead to? Answer, bhakti. There are persons that they do not have association with a devotee. So let's go back. How does bhakti begin? Answer, bhakti begins by associating with one who's carrying bhakti. Bhakti doesn't begin any other way. Bhakti begins when you associate with those that are carrying bhakti. And if they're compassionate and kind, then they extend that bhakti. And then all you have to do is say yes. Thank you. And then you're carrying bhakti too. You got infected. You know, the good kind of infection instead of the bad kind. So similar to how Maitreya became a bhakta by associating with Uddhava and Krishna. He became a Krishna bhakta, although he was very elevated. In fact, he was a bit of an impersonalist. Leaning-wise, he was detached, but not attached to Bhagavan, so he was attached to Brahman. but through association he became a great devotee. So the purpose of Sankhya is, I belong to the category of spirit, I don't belong to the category of matter, and so there's detachment from matter that comes as a result of Sankhya. But supposing you don't have a devotee association, it stops there. You become neutral, renounced, detached, but neutral, not attached to the Supreme. You become attached to Brahman, the impersonal, personless feature of the Supreme. But Kapila is not an impersonalist. So after, at the Sankhya section of Canto 3 is chapter 26. And it's detailed and detailed and detailed. And if you want to have your head spin, you can go through it. And you're going to go through it anyways, even if you don't want to have your head spin, because it's part of the Bhagavatam. It's part of Sankhya. It's Sankhya. The purpose of at the end of the Sankhya section, it's just a very quick statement, and now meditate upon the Supreme. And then the purpose of meditating upon the Supreme, manmana bhavamad bhakto. Then so there's 2 chapters that are specifically on devotional service, that follow the Sankhya section, because that's really what he wants to give, and that's really what is the answer. So Devahuti wants to know, what am I going to do? I'm already feeling separation from, like, anything from my husband. We've been together for 10,000 years, living alone in the forest. We're really attached to each other. He just left. Not just left, but he left. And I'm feeling grief and separation from him. So how to handle this? And an answer, an essence answer that he gives is association with devotees, or devotionals, because devotional service. Because when you become attached to the Supreme, then you can be detached from all kinds of other emotions because of the strength of attachment to the Supreme. Now, how do you become attached to the Supreme? That's a good question too. And then the answer is sadhusanga. And through sadhusanga, it nurtures your attachment for the Supreme. So one of my god brothers, Dravida Prabhu, did anybody here know who he is? You know who he is. Anyone know? He is one of the chief editors of Prabhupada's books. For maybe like 45 years, that's what he's been doing, editing Prabhupada's books. He's a word perfectionist person. He got professional training, and that's what he does for Prabhupada, is edit Prabhupada's books. You know, in PTG articles, and he edits the Vyasa Puja book, and he's an editor. When the pandemic came, we had to stop, but he was coming each year to Chicago, and we would have a winter retreat. And one year, his topic was Sadhusangastika. What's that? There's 8 ashtakas, there's 8 verses in this chapter, Canto 3, chapter 25, that he identifies in his scholarship. These are 8 verses that are emphasizing sadhusanga. Because go back to the beginning of Devahuti's questions, what you see in the painting here. How am I going to deal with this grief of losing my husband? And how am I going to deal with when you're gone? Where's my shelter? And his succinct answer, that he expands on his succinct answer, is association of devotees. It'll take care of the whole thing. But then there's details and details. So I wanted to go over one of those verses. It's a well-known verse. So those of you that like to look up verses, 3:25, 25. And we'll say the verse together. 3:25:25. You ready? Satam pasangam mama virya samvidho bhavanti hrit karna rasayana kata taj joshanat ashvapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. It even sounds nice, doesn't it? Satam prasangan mama virya samvidho bhavanti rit karna rasayana kata taj joshanat ashvapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. So the last word is anu kramishati. Anu means to follow, krama means step. So anu kramishati, step by step. What follows by the procedure from the previous part is shraddha, then ratir, then bhakti. Faith is nourished by hearing. Rati, one develops some strong attraction, and then finally pure devotion. Shraddha, rati, bhakti, anukramishati. From what? Well, from association with devotees. But when you're with the association with devotees, that's the first line. Satam, devotees. Sangha, sangha, sadhu sangha. Through association with devotees, mama virya samvidho. Mama, Krishna's virya, wonderful activities are discussed. Samvidha. That's what when you're with devotees, that's what devotees like to do. Krishna Katha, topics about Krishna's wonderful qualities. And how does it work? Bhavanti Rit Karna, Bhavanti Rit Karna. The heart, that's Rit, and Karna, the heart becomes very pleased by the sound vibration entering the ear, and Bhavanti Rit Karna Rasayana. What's Rasayana? If you know Ayurvedic medicine, what's Rasayana? It's a medicine. It's a rejuvenation medicine, right? You know? Rasayana. It's a rejuvenation medicine. Rasayana Katha is very pleasing and nourishing. It starts with the ear, but then it goes to the heart. Rasayana Katha. Bhavanti Rit Karna Rasayana Katha. And it takes one to the third line. Vartma means path. The path of apavarga, the path of liberation. The path of liberation means, my dear Mother Devahuti, this grief that you say you're feeling, you'll get relief from it. You'll be liberated from that emotion that you have of grief by taking this medicine that comes through the ear. And it makes the ear feel very pleased, makes the heart feel very pleased. And Shraddha, faith in Krishna, attachment for Krishna, pure devotion for Krishna in sequence. Anu Kramishati. It's a really nice verse. Here's the translation. In the association of pure devotees, Satam Prasangan, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, Apavargavartmani, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. What does that mean? It means, well, we're not there yet. Only when you're at the liberation stage, then devotional service begins. It means then that because devotion, let's go to Rupa Goswami's teachings. Rupa Goswami teaches us that devotion is pure. Now, devotion is pure, but supposing we're not pure yet. Ring any bells? Devotion is pure, and we're not pure yet. So what's our experience? It's a limitation of that which is pure. So there's still filters, or clouds, or coverings. It's not, we don't get the full experience of pure devotional service. But when that becomes mature, the hearing of the activities of the personality of Godhead, etc., becomes matured. The coverings become removed, and then pure devotional service is yours. Because devotional service is pure. And when your consciousness is pure, you can experience that without any obstruction. Purport? It's just not a big purport. The process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service is described here. The first point is that one must seek the association of persons who are Krishna conscious and who engage in devotional service. Negatively, without such association, one cannot make advancement. Simply by theoretical knowledge or study, one cannot make any appreciable advancement. One must give up the association of materialistic persons, and give up the association means, confidential exchanges. We don't wrinkle our nose at people and say something not nice. We just don't intimately associate. We're polite. Bhaktivinoda Thakur details this very nicely in his writings. How is a grahastha supposed to follow this? Because you're in your work situations, you're in school situations, you're with people that are, they have some bad habits and they have some bad speech, and they're not always good to each other, and what do you do? So the fundamental principle is you respect because their spirit soul is part of Krishna. You just don't intimately associate. You speak polite things, and you don't intimately associate. Then who do you intimately associate? I want to have friends. I'm a social being. I want friends. Associate with devotees. And then there's ways to associate with devotees, starting with what we're doing right now. Seek the association of devotees, because without the association of devotees, one cannot understand the activities of the Lord. Generally, people are convinced of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, because they do not associate with devotees. They cannot understand that the absolute truth can be a person and have personal activities. This is a very difficult subject matter. Unless one has personal association of the absolute truth, there's no meaning to devotion. Okay, well, it just goes on. He's encouraging the effects, purifying effects of association, and then the opportunity to then have a genuine experience of what a personal feature of the Supreme is through the association of those who are carrying that conception and that lifestyle that goes with the conception. And that's what we do. And as we do, we also want to share that experience and the means to have that experience with others. No, you have to do it gently and politely and sincerely. But if you have those those basic good qualities, it's attractive. Very attractive. Having good qualities is important. Supposing you have nice knowledge, we have Prabhupada's books, etc., etc., and I'm still carrying a whole bunch of bad qualities. Not very attractive. People may take a couple of steps back. So it's part of our responsibility to our founder Acharya and to Krishna to represent the teaching through the medium of good qualities. So what do you do if you don't have good qualities? You don't go into a hole or hide out or something. You go associate with those that are more advanced, and by that association, you can become more advanced. And be very conscientious about how you interact with people in the world, and people in the world are also looking at how you interact with each other. You speak up here, but your behavior is down there. That's not good. So our behavior and our character should match, gradually at least. Here's the good news. Krishna's kind. That's the good news. And when Krishna sees that you want to please him, he'll help you. It'll help you by decorating you with good qualities. Because when Krishna, it's chapter 12, Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna sees his devotees decorated with good qualities, he smiles. Now, the qualities came from him. But Krishna smiles when he sees his devotees decorated by he's got a big, good quality warehouse. Better than Amazon Prime. He has really big warehouse. And he's ready to give it. But he wants to give it to people who are going to represent it nicely, not trample it. So he'll examine you to see, where is your heart? Is it cosmetic or is it genuine? And if it's genuine, then little by little he'll decorate you and he'll smile. When you see Krishna smiling, you smile. And Krishna wants, okay, that's nice, that's some more good qualities. And it just keeps going like that. That's devotional service. I'm saying it in simple language, but that's devotional service. That's how it works. Okay, there's another section that I'm not going to go into. I'll mention it. Maybe tomorrow evening. I'm going to be doing something. Tomorrow evening I'll go in another verse from Kapila Dev's teachings. But another place where Kapila Dev, we heard on Makara Sankranti that when he was engaging in austerities, where was he? Gangasagara, right? Kapila Ashram is a place at Gangasagara where the Ganga flows into the ocean, is Gangasagara. And Makara Sankranti is a very auspicious time to go there and offer respects to Kapila Dev, because that's where he had his ashram, at Gangasagara. But he had another ashram. We'll hear about that tomorrow. We'll see some pictures too. We heard about it already. The bottom of the universe. What's he doing at the bottom of the universe? He's purifying the place. Why does he go anywhere? Purifying the place. So here tomorrow evening, that's something else happens. A little bit more about his teachings, and a little bit more about what happened when he was at the bottom of the universe. Some important event happened. The descent of the Ganges happened because of what happened at the bottom of the universe. Okay, so see if there's some discussion. Yes.
This time I wrote it down so that my nervousness doesn't actually doesn't take control of me. So as a congregation, we have been doing japa in the mornings collectively as a congregation. And we learned also to chant, holding in our mind the relationship that we have and the relationship that we desire to have with Krishna. or I should say, just imagining ourselves standing before Krishna, and as we petition him to be engaged in his service.
Yeah.
So in my mind's eye, as I begin chanting, I imagined there's Krishna, and there's me, kind of very small. And it evoked a great sense of just general inadequacy. It's the first thing that came to me.
That's good.
And I was keenly aware of my present state. And I asked the question, with all of my struggles and everything that I'm just dealing with from day to day, I was asking myself, how can I stand before Krishna as mired as I am? And so while I have faith in Krishna, I may not have such a deep faith in myself at this point. So I remember in listening to one of your YouTube lectures recently in Chicago, and you briefly touched on the 6 divisions of surrender. I think you partially answered, some of what my concerns are even tonight.
Oh.
But I'm thinking that I have a suspicion that maybe my lack of understanding of these 6 divisions of separation is maybe also related to I guess I would say the struggles that I have right now. So could you kind of explain or touch on some of those 6 degrees of 6 divisions of surrender, and
That's a really nice topic.
how I can actually kind of grow beyond this struggle?
Well, I'll give a mini, and I'll invite you to, there's recordings of the whole thing. I mean, I don't know where to find it, but it's, Shikshastika, not Shikshastika. The Sharanagati. Sharana means to surrender. Sharanagati is a set of songs written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that there's 8 songs on this of the one of the 6, and another 6 songs on those. So there's songs that are taking one through the process of surrender. And the first of the 6 is humility. It's a great place to start. Congratulations. Because there's no question of surrender if one is proud. So he goes through in those songs listing what he's proud of. And then as each of the songs goes further and further, actually this pride is my nemesis. And I'd like to give up this pride and take deep shelter, deeper and deeper shelter in the mood of humility towards the personality of Godhead. Now that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's another, something that you may find helpful, is Rupa Goswami. He writes about humility this way. I have no good qualification. You won't find any good qualities in me. You look in me and you'll only see bad qualities. Nonetheless, I'm shameless, because you're my only hope. And I have no qualification to get your mercy, but it's my only hope. So I hope against hope. Please be kind. So it's from the place of humility, appealing for descending mercy. Looking at myself, and I see disqualification. I don't see qualification other than I'm fallen and you're kind to the fallen, especially those who take shelter. So with humility, it's go further with the mood of shelter taking and appealing for mercy. Now, something that helps you, or more than helps you, is essential, is the mood of service. Now, back to your statement, it's a classic one. I don't have the qualification to come before Krishna. Look at, I'm unclean. It's embarrassing. And the more I get a little bit clearer in my head, I realize how cluttered my heart is. I want to go back to where I was. It was just dull. I didn't realize how cluttered my heart was. That's not an answer either. Keep going. And humility becomes more profound. In inspiration to be engaged in service, although not qualified to be engaged in service, becomes more profound. So the service mood becomes more profound. But it's humble service, not look at me kind of service. Humble service. And a stronger appeal for ascending, descending mercy. Those three things. Humility, the connection is the connection of service, and the necessity for mercy to make the whole thing work at all. Because there's no qualification over here other than I want to be in a relationship with Krishna, although I'm unqualified. And the medium of that connection is service. A spiritual life means that, or say it, different ways. When you meet a spiritual person, that's what you meet. Someone who has those feelings, and they're moved by those feelings. And you feel it when you're with that spiritual person. You feel those feelings. You're like, wow, I wish I had those feelings. So to get those feelings is to associate with those that have those feelings. The feelings, I'm using the word feelings, it's, I wish to be in service to the Supreme Person. And there's moods of that service, but humble service. Mood of humble service is a good place to begin. No problem. It's good.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, Krishna.
So, this is a very personal question. If you would choose to answer it separately, you can, but I think it applies to many of us. Even after, trying to improve my process of chanting for so many years, there are days when I feel very happy while doing it. And then there are days when I'm trying the exact same steps, but I have to keep pulling my mind back. So is it normal for the
it's
quality
completely
to...
Unsteady. Anishtata bhakti. It's got a nice Sanskrit name for it. There's 6 divisions. A nice book for all of us, a nice book for you, is Madhurya Kandambani. Rupa Goswami is teaching about Shuddha Bhakti. Vishwanath Chakravarti is talking about how to get there. In detail, specifically even with chanting. But, other forms of other expressions of service. It's completely, the unsteadiness is 6, levels. And they have this characteristic and that characteristic and that characteristic. Causes and symptoms. So what to do?
I read through the Anarthas and through Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and all, and I try to analyze after that. Why was today different from where I wanted it to be?
You're not the controller, come on. Let's just put it the other way. How many lifetimes have you been at this?
Many.
Unknown. Too many to count, we don't know. So the tendencies are deeply ingrained. Habits it takes a while to form them, and it takes a longer while to remove them. And a fundamental habit is trying to be an enjoyer. The bhakti flips it around. I'm having this ongoing dialogue with somebody, a professor, a well-educated person, and he struggles like anything with his spiritual aspirations. And somehow he's not getting it, although he agrees. Then he goes, the bungee cord goes back. Krishna's at the center, not you. It's not about me. It's about, well, yeah, but, we have our needs. Okay. So we calibrate our efforts in life according to our needs. But the bottom line is, the real need is that loving relationship. And when that loving relationship is full, then their needs are met. So we're not there yet. So we have to keep acknowledging the shortcomings, introspect and be honest what the shortcomings are. Don't cosmetic put it over, but just nonetheless, let me continue. It's like a little bit like his question, but it's a little further along the path of, I've been at this for a number of years now, and it's still anishtata bhakti. When will nishtha come? And nishtha comes when there's the stuff inside the heart is cleansed away. There's a price. And that's our sincerity and steady practice. What Rupa Goswami says is enthusiasm, or amplify enthusiasm becomes, that sounds like a bad word, but greed. A greed for that spiritual progress, where you're just so, you're absorbed. A greedy person, generally we would connect greed with money. So money, 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 money. And then money, 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 money. And there's no end. Money, money, money. So greedy for, it's just a strong, extraordinary enthusiasm. That's how it's described in the Bhagavatam by Krishna to Uddhava. Extraordinary enthusiasm. For what? So it just that enthusiasm has to be redirected to our relationship with Krishna. And the relationship with Krishna is not about me, it's about the relationship of Krishna. It's where there's pure love. It's not about the subject, it's about the object, the person. So good association, same, sadhu sangha. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana katha taj joshanad ashapavargavarti. So as you become familiar with the Bhagavatam, what happens? Coming attractions for you. What happens as you become familiar with the Bhagavatam, it starts to go in. It's not just intellectual or that, oh, that's nice. It's not just on the mind. It becomes, you carry it in your heart all the time. And as you carry it in your heart, it's not like you can recite slokas. I mean, some people like slokas. Dravid is one who really likes slokas. Some people like the meanings. Whatever, the message just stays within. And there's a price. You do more of that, and as you do more of that, the attraction for the other stuff subsides. So we're in this mixed position. And that's the unsteadiness. For a long time. Lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of absorption in the temporary, with the idea of it's about me. Are we having fun yet? Know that.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I will.
I have two simple questions.
Okay.
Is there a significance behind Kapila's golden hair? Like just 'cause? Okay. And then my second question is, what does nishtha mean?
What does
Nishta mean?
nishtha means steady? Nishtata is unsteady. Nishtha is steady. So one of there's 9 stages in bhakti, and one of them, number 5, is nishtha. And before nishtha is unsteady. That's where we are.
Thank you,
But
Maharaj.
it becomes steady by abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice, and practice with faith. Not just mechanically practice, but with faith. With faith. And faith in what? Because we're going to have faith in something. So faith in what? These are nice topics. Faith is intrinsic to the soul. That is, we have faith in something. And the greedy person, we use that word greedy already, get money. Because if you get money, then you can get what you want because you need money to get what you want. So get money. And everything else is surrounding that. And people are standing the way you step on them because you want money. So there's other things that are important to some other people. And when that faith goes to, when my relationship with Krishna is revived and strong and secure, when my relationship with Krishna is alive and strong and secure, that's all I need. Because he'll take care of everything. It's not like I become lazy, but there's protection, there's safety, there's love, there's meaningfulness, there's knowledge, and there's my life around me, and I do those things, my life around me, in relation to that one. And I feel complete. And otherwise, there's something missing. So, when one reposes one's faith there, you may be, in the unsteady stage, but repose your faith. Let me get on this train and ride it to the end. In good association, of course. And I'll feel content that I'm making progress. One of the things you don't want to do is become lazy or complacent. That's one of the categories of unsteadiness. Laya, laziness. That's another subject. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You talked about how if you surrender to Krishna, you may not have all the good qualities, but slowly he may have mercy and decorate you with good qualities.
That's
If I may, without any offense, request you to define what are those good qualities according to you.
Well, not according to me. I'm nobody. But according to Krishna, there's many places, and one of my favorite places is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verses 8 through 12. It's items of knowledge, but you look at the list and its qualities. And then at the end of chapter 12, you find another list of qualities that are pleasing to Krishna. And he's the decorator of those qualities. So those are two places. That's the symptoms by which good quality, or the quality of Krishna consciousness will be known, as those other good qualities are manifest. How's that?
Thank you, Maharaj. If no one has a question, I had a follow-up,
go
if I
ahead,
may
Nana.
ask. About devotee association, good association and bad association. Growing up, I would only talk to a few people because I know if I do bad association, I'll get impacted because I was
That's
not so
smart.
strong
That's
in
smart.
not getting influenced. But I learned I'm a social being as well, so I learned that maybe there is a better way. When I was trusting myself that I won't get impacted, that was probably around 25, 26 years. I opened up a bit and started associating with others, with trust that thankfully Krishna will save me. And I learned that the first approach was not that positive. Maybe it was right at that time, because you should open up your heart to everyone. So
What
that,
does that mean, open up your heart to everyone? Because I'm not sure I'm comfortable with open up your heart to everyone.
meaning be kind to everyone.
Oh, that's different.
And whether that person chooses the path that you are choosing, at least they can know what is the path you are choosing, and then
But
decide.
that's not the same. There's 6 types of, in Rupa Goswami's writings, you're familiar, 6 types of loving exchange. And 2 of those 6 are what you're talking about, at least when I'm kind of like, well, wait a minute. You're polite and you're kind and you et cetera, et cetera, et cetera to everyone. And things that are very confidential to you like, whatever. Those confidential things should be shared with intimate things with devotees. Like, I don't want to get into it. Parenting is a big topic. Now, what should I do? And if you should share those things with devotees, because it's very sensitive, and you go left instead of right, and you can have a problem. So you associate with devotees, and people that have skill in that area, but they're devotional at least. They don't have to be like Hare Krishna devotees, but devotional persons that have got God at the center of their life.
And what if I'm leaving, let's say, a few people?
What if what?
What if on the path, like I work in a corporate setup.
Sure.
I do talk about the service we do at a temple.
Okay, no problem.
A, to create awareness, and B, maybe some message goes in their ears and somebody.
That's okay. That's okay. How you do it and to the degree to which you do it is going to, vary from person to person. But that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Last question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I know Prabhupada has a very good choice of words. We talked about a lot of words today. So my question is, when we talked about Maitreya, we learned.
When you
he
talk
was,
about
Maitreya,
Maitreya,
not Maitreya. He became good. He was a great person, but he became a pure devotee after meeting Maitreya. But in yesterday's morning call, in Canto 3, text 4 and 5, we learned that Vidura, they had mentioned as great and pure devotee, whereas Suta Goswami as only great devotee. Isn't he pure, Maharaj?
what's the punchline of your question?
Why is Suta not called pure, but only great? Suta Goswami. And Canto 3, text 4 and 5. Whereas Vidura,
Well, to use an adjective for one person and not the same adjective for another person doesn't mean comparative superlative. You may read it that way because that's literally what it says, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's how you're supposed to take it.
okay.
That this is comparative and that's superlative. Doesn't have to mean that.
Okay, sure.
After all, Suta Goswami is the speaker of the Bhagavatam.
Exactly.
And after all, he heard from Shukadeva Goswami. And we read it again and again and again and again and again, and our great acharyas read it again and again and again. It's not like he's kind of, comparatively not there yet. That's not a right way to take it, I don't think.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Last question.
Krishna
Okay.
Maharaj, please
Okay.
accept my humble obeisances.
Thanks, Krishna.
Maharaj, you said bhakti comes only with association. So if we are not in association, does it go away? Even if we are chanting and reading Bhagavad Gita?
No. It's just, how does bhakti start?
Associating with other people.
You receive bhakti from one who's carrying bhakti. Okay. I've got a bhakti vessel, it's called my heart. And I may meet somebody and spill a little bhakti on them. Whoop. Pardon me. It's okay. So that's how bhakti begins. Now, your question is, if bhakti begins, am I going to lose it unless I keep getting bhakti spilled on me? No, you can continue to cultivate it by the method of cultivation. It's advisable, keep devotee association, you get more bhakti. But supposing, I know some people that live in remote places, etc., and their bhakti is just fine. I know some people that are in remote places and their bhakti goes down. I know some people that are in close association and their bhakti goes down from offense or pride or some other things. So the answer to your question is it won't go down. It's dependent upon how you apply yourself to the means of keeping that bhakti alive. And the means of keeping the bhakti alive is continued hearing and service. And with that, an internal desire, let me connect with Krishna. And it works.
Thank you, Maharaj. That answers.
Okay.
Can I just ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
But why is
I
it that
knew it was
bhakti
coming
comes? But why is it that bhakti comes with association?
Why? Because that's where bhakti comes from. I mean, bhakti arises from bhakti. Bhakti doesn't arise from anything material. You can't put a whole bunch of material things together and stir and get bhakti. Bhakti arises from, it's the internal potency. So internal potency, you connect internal potency with something and it becomes charged with internal potency. Bhakti Devi, this is another way of saying the same thing. Bhakti Devi is a person. Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Radharani. And Bhakti Devi, when she gives her mercy, then you've got mercy. And if you don't get mercy from Bhakti Devi, you're not going to get bhakti, because she's the giver of bhakti, and she's the expansion of Radharani. So don't ask for Radharani without Radharani. What happened?
Thank you very much.
All right. Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.